My name's Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian Financial Channel, and today is Wednesday, January the 13th. It's about 1:25 Central Standard Time. Silver opened up at $86.82 on the overnight markets. The low is just a penny below that, and then the high was achieved just in the last few minutes of right around $93 an ounce. That almost doesn't even sound real, does it? But anyway, the market obviously is continuing its advance. A lot of people were talking about this Wednesday when the new margins came into effect that was going to have a big effect on the market. Well, if it has, it's had one in the opposite direction that some people were predicting, because the market right now is up about $6 an ounce from yesterday's close, or about 7%. And so we've seen a very nice rise. As a matter of fact, we're getting kind of used to this, aren't we? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're at, and also maybe some strategies you can use to take advantage of some tools that are at everybody's disposal if they will just use them. I want to remind you of a channel that we had set on December the 29th. It ranged from about $84 an ounce to a little over $70 an ounce. We remained in that channel for about 2 weeks, and finally it broke out to the upside 2 days ago with conviction, over $1 an ounce on good volume. It closed above this line. In the overnight markets, Monday night, Tuesday morning, it dipped down a little bit below what had been resistance at $83.96. I think it was maybe $83.40 some odd cents, but it just was there for a few minutes. And then today, it just shot up. And when it started going up, it just doesn't seem like it stopped. And so I have a current channel right here, but there should be a question mark after that. And I've got a 93. It's probably outside of the frame with a question mark on that. But the idea is now that we're in a different channel than we had been. And I would suspect that that upper part of the last channel we were in at about $84 is going to be your support for a while. May not be. There's a couple of items in the news that I wanted to bring to your attention. On Monday, when the CME group came out with a press release, one of the things that they mentioned is they're going to be introducing a brand new 100-ounce contract. I think that's going to be beginning sometime in February. But I believe, and I've heard a number of people talk about this, and I think they're absolutely right, that this is more of an attempt to get people away from investing in physicals. And so they're trying to entice these people back into the paper market. Hopefully, in their minds, I think it'll take some of the stress off the physical market. I doubt very seriously if this is going to work, but time will tell. There's a very important contract delivery coming up in March, and this has some massive contracts who may very well be standing for delivery. And so the March delivery on the COMEX could have something that could affect the entire world. If they're not able to handle the massive deliveries that are starting to look like are going to be taken, then that could really change the way the COMEX does business in the future. As a matter of fact, it may change a number of the different exchanges around the world. Most of you realize that Shanghai is the main physical exchange in the world right now. What a shame that is when you think about it. A communist nation is the freest trading commodities exchange right now in the world. And when we talk about our prices getting up to $93 on the COMEX, understand on the Shanghai exchange, they're about $10 or more higher than that. So $100 plus on the exchange. Obviously, they're valued in yuan, but when you make the conversion to dollars, you're looking at over $100 per ounce. And so as long as that spread exists between the Western exchanges, talking about primarily the LBMA in London and the COMEX in America, until that spread starts to tighten between them and Shanghai, I think you're going to see upward pressure on silver. And of course, the reason for that is because there's a very heavy demand right now. It's not because of Shanghai, it's because of the physical demand, and Shanghai just happens to be the best reflection of physical demand today. So something to keep in mind on all that. One other item in the news that I have found to be somewhat interesting, and that's the U.S. has suspended their sales of 2026 Eagles. I don't know if any of the authorized dealers have any on the way or when they'll get them, but this is somewhat significant, and it will probably put a little bit more demand on the U.S. Eagle for a while, which is good for people like me because I prefer 90% silver right now because it's on sale. You can get it much lower than you can the Eagles. Now, if you sell it back, you're going to get a much lower price on it, about $10 an ounce, but as long as you're buying it for that price below spot, I think you're going to find that it's still a fair market, and so that's something to keep in mind. Now, as far as some strategies for when we are in these ranges, when we were in the last range, that one that was set on December 29th where we had a $14 range, I just started really kind of dabbling in mining stocks. Now, I've done that for quite a number of years now, but put a little bit more money in that account and started buying when it was the lower end of that range and selling when it was at the upper end of that range. And then finally, when it broke out of that range, I'm starting to look at a different set of parameters on that. In other words, I'm looking much more at the $84 level being the lower end of the range, and right now we don't have an upper end in place, do we? $93 is the current value. It's also the current all-time intraday high on the COMEX, and so until we make a high and then we back off of that a little bit, we really don't have a ceiling for the range. So can you trade mining stocks during a channel like this? And the answer is you can. It's just hard to know exactly when to sell because you don't have a top. And so I've been trading primarily 5 stocks. Don't go by what I'm looking at. I've just found these to be fairly good for the situation that I'm in. But I like First Majestic. I like Coeur Mining. I like Hecla Mining. I like PSLV. And then Eric Sprott also recommended another stock that I'd never heard of, but I've looked into a little bit and I've invested in it a little bit. It's called Hycroft Mining. And so those are the 5 stocks I've been kind of buying and selling while it was in a range earlier, and now that it's kind of broken out of that range, I've just kind of bought them and I'm holding on to them for right now. Even added a little bit of extra money into my brokerage account. And again, it's a very small account, but it gives an opportunity to trade a little bit instead of buying and selling physicals. Right now, I am buying some physicals. I actually sold some yesterday. I sold $70 face of 90%. I was able to get right at $80 an ounce for that. So obviously it was below spot. When I called in, I think it was $8.50 per ounce below spot. The best I've seen right now is $7 per ounce below spot, but I have to mail that into Florida and I can't lock in my prices with that particular coin shop. So I like going to Amarillo at Stout Safe Storage because I can go in, deal with them in person. They will allow me to lock in the price as long as I'm bringing it in a fairly short amount of time, which I was, just an hour, and so I was able to sell that. I've had a lot of flack for this idea of selling things right now because people say, well, you really can't replace it. But let me just give you an example of how maybe you can replace it if you know where to look and if you know what you're looking at. And those are 2 very important things. I've gotten on eBay probably since 2002 and have bought and sold primarily 90% U.S. coins pre-1965, as well as pre-36 U.S. silver dollars. Been doing it for so long now that when I look at this particular platform on eBay, I've got a real good idea if it's a good deal and if it looks genuine or not. After you've done it for a while, sometimes you can spot a fake just by looking at a picture of it. Other times you have to use a Sigma to determine whether it's genuine or not. I do both. But here's what I've bought since the year began. Today, just before I started doing this video, I found a small deal on eBay. It was 8 Barber quarters. That's about 1.45 ounces of silver. and I got it for $94. So it was about $65.73 an ounce. Not a great deal, but not bad. And remember, I had just sold $70 face at $80 an ounce yesterday. And so I'm just kind of replacing what I sold. On January the 11th, I bought a little bit bigger deal for $360. It consisted of four 40% half dollars, Kennedy half dollars, 4 Morgan dollars, and then it also had 2 of the modern U.S. Mint Morgans. And those Morgans have 0.859 ounces of silver. One was a proof, one was uncirculated. And so that particular deal was about $66.67 an ounce on that. On January the 10th, I bought a Morgan and a Peace dollar in a set for $97.05. It also included a couple of modern U.S. dollars, plus I believe it was a 1935 silver certificate. And so I subtracted those $3 from the $97.05 price. So it was $94.05 for 2 silver dollars. That's 1.55 ounces of silver. So that particular deal cost me $60.80 an ounce. On January the 9th, I bought 6 Mercury dimes. Again, a very small deal for a little over $25. That's only 0.43 ounces of silver, and it was just a little less than $60 an ounce. Also on January the 9th, I was able to get a set of Roosevelt dimes from 1946 to 1964. So there was $4.80 in face, or 3.43 ounces. And I bought that for $159.50, or $46.47. The point of all this is a lot of people think you cannot get bargains for less than spot, but you can if you know what you're looking at and if you're cautious. Here's something else that I have found. There are certain places to look. On eBay, for example, I go to U.S. coins, and then I go to the Buy It Now section, and I go to the most recently listed part of that. And then I've got the deals as they come up, and you have to act pretty quick. I saw one today. It was 11 Mercury dimes for $33, and as soon as I clicked on, it had already sold. It had only been up for a minute, so you have to be quick in order to get these deals. But I think if you will just go to the U.S. coins, Buy It Now, recently listed, and then if you'll go over to the left-hand bar and scroll down just a little bit, you'll find something that says sold. And if you'll hit that, you'll see what has sold recently, and you'll be able to see that every once in a while, a pretty good deal comes up. Now, those deals I mentioned to you have not come back in the mail yet. The least recent one was just 5 days ago, so they haven't gotten here yet. So obviously, I don't have them in hand. I don't own them yet. But here are some that I have gotten recently. On January the 8th, I bought a small lot. It had 2 1964 Kennedys and 1 64 Kennedy. And I got that for $44.80 for 0.87 ounces. So that was $51.41 an ounce. On the 7th, I bought this little set, which is kind of interesting. I've never seen one of these before. It is colorized, but they are sovereigns. There is a Libertad, there's a Britannia, and there's a U.S. Silver Eagle. I bought these for $212 again, they've already gotten in, so a little over $70 an ounce, just under $71 an ounce for 3 ounces of silver that if I wanted to sell it today, I could get probably spot less, maybe $1 or $2 because they are colorized. And then I made a mistake. This is one that I bought just the day before that, on the 6th of January. I bought 3 Peace dollars for $184.38. And the reason I did that was because I thought one of them was a 1924S uncirculated, which if you collect coins, you know that's a fairly expensive coin. It just turned out to have a small mark where the mint mark goes, and so it was just a Philadelphia. And so I paid more than I would have normally. I typically wouldn't have bought this, but for 2.37 ounces, I got it for a price of a little under $80 an ounce, $79.46. So this was one of my mistakes. That happens every once in a while. Just a day before that, on the 5th of January, I bought 14 Mercury dimes. When they came in, I was delighted because they were all almost uncirculated or uncirculated. And so these cost me $59.91. If anybody converts 90% to ounces, you'll know that 14 dimes makes an ounce. And so this cost me about $59.49 an ounce on these particular coins. On the 2nd of January, I bought an Eagle for $63.69 and made sure that it was authentic when it got in. It's already in another location, so I don't have that one to show you. I did buy on the 3rd of January a little 5-dime set for Roosevelt's pre-65 in a Mercury for $20.91 or about $58 an ounce. And then on the 1st, I bought 11 40%, I don't know if you can see these or not, 11 40% silver half dollars. It was listed as 12, but I counted them and it was just 11. But as I looked at them, one of them was a 1964. And so about 1.84 ounces of silver or $46.34 an ounce. So that was a fairly good deal for me. And then also on the 1st of January, I bought 30 Washington quarters for $312.30. That's a little over 5 ounces of silver. It came out to $58.24 an ounce. I don't have those to show you. They did come in, but I sold them yesterday. And then I've gotten a couple others just before that. I bought a group of half dollars on the 30th of December. There were 7 of these Walking Liberty half dollars. They were brilliant uncirculated and almost uncirculated. I paid a little bit more than I typically would have. I paid $170 for $3.50 face, or a little under $70 an ounce for that. And then just a few days before that, I bought these 3 proof sets, one from 1958, one from 1957, and one from 1956. And these cost me $93, so that was a little under $50, or I think a little under $51 an ounce for that. And I got some pretty good proof sets. 1956 is obviously, for those of you who collect coins, a much better than just melt set. And so is 57 and 58 for that matter. So anyway, I wanted to show you that because, again, a lot of people have wondered, can you really get good deals? And once they come in, are they really what they say they are? Typically, again, if you're used to doing this and you know what you're looking at, typically the sellers are pretty honest on eBay. There are some crooks, no doubt. There's a lot of counterfeit out there. You have to know what you're doing, and once you get it in, if you're not real comfortable with it, go get it checked. My local dealer in Amarillo has a Sigma, and they'll let me come down and just test my silver when I get it in if I have any questions. So that's something that I take advantage of. So this is something that hopefully will give you an idea of how you can get silver and be trading in this market for under the market value on that. Again, one more thing before we stop. These things all have a certain amount of risk associated with them. And when you buy and sell, once you've sold what you've purchased, you're going to have a tax bill that goes along with that. And so that has to be taken into consideration. But if you can get all that figured out, and if you're watching what you're doing, I think you're going to be able to find some pretty good deals. Garage sales, oddly enough, are also an excellent place to find some decent silver. A lot of people like to hunt rolls at the banks where they'll just go in and get a box of Kennedy half dollars, and they'll go through them and see if there's any 40% or maybe even 90% halves in there. I think they're pretty well picked through now, but every once in a while you'll find somebody that's brought in some hand-rolled ones, and you can ask your bank for that if you have a good relationship with them. So again, these are just some of the ideas if you're looking to get silver on a bargain. And even if you can't really afford it now, if you get it for a bargain, you can sell it as soon as you get it, and you can keep the difference between the bargain that you got and the amount that you get for it as far as your profit, less taxes, of course. So anyway, that's the video for today, kind of all over the board, but maybe it'll give you some ideas on some different areas. I would keep up with the news right now. It's moving awfully fast. Watch this March delivery on the COMEX because it could change silver in a hurry. And then also keep in mind that the market has gone up almost unrestrained since it was at $54 an ounce. If it has a pullback, don't lose your mind over it. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we actually will get a pretty large correction. So be attentive to these things. If you're of a mind and you like to take profit, do that. You'll feel better for it if that's your mindset. But if you're just saving it, it'll drive you crazy if it keeps going up, so just hang on to it if that's the deal. But anyway, I appreciate your watching today. I hope these give you some ideas, and I hope this information has been of some assistance and some use to you. If you have comments, please pass them along. I really have enjoyed that section. Some really strong comments that have given me a lot of good ideas and information that I didn't possess before I read that comment. So to those of you who've been doing that, I'm truly in your debt. I appreciate that. Appreciate those who've subscribed. Appreciate you for watching this far. I hope we'll see you again next time. God bless.